Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven, and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some entitled parent stories, and our first story of the day is by Snoo8647. You need to feed my pet dog with the food you bring for the street dogs. Context: I live in India where there are a lot of street dogs which don't get a lot of food or affection, and I just decided one day to feed them. From that day onwards, I feed all the street dogs on my street. There are 7, 5, and 2. I started this a week after the pups were born. Now, I am the only one that feeds the pups, but some of the people who live on my street give me money to buy the food for the pups, so it's a team effort. So every day after 6 p.m., I take off with 3 packets of biscuits to feed the dogs. There are 5 dogs on the street I live and 2 on the street behind me. I feed the 2 dogs behind me and we have started to grow a good bond. I just need a tap and they would run up to me even when I don't have food. After I feed them, I continue to walk down towards my street where I feed the pups and mom. When I was going to my street, I saw this little Chihuahua mix. She was very cute and I asked the owner, who was about my age, if I could pet her. This was done in Gujarati, so please forgive me for any translation mistakes. The nice kid says, "I'm sorry, you can't touch her due to Corona. If it were not there, I would have let you touch her." I say, "Oh, I understand," and we went our ways. When I started feeding the pups, she returned to the same street, but this time another lady, who I assumed was her mom, came with her. She saw me feeding the pups and asked me what I was doing. This is how the conversation went. The entitled mother said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm just feeding the street dogs. I feed them every day." She says, "So you feed all the dogs, right?" I say, "Yeah, I feed all the street dogs." "So when will you give her back?" Me, hella confused. What? She says, "You said you'll feed my dog." I never said I'll feed your dog, but I'm willing to feed her with a small fee. Now, I asked for a 500 RS per month, which is about $6. "What? I'm not paying that much money to feed my dog. I expect her to be back to my house in 30 minutes. The nice kid says, "Mom, you just denied his offer and you're still making him work?" The entitled mother whispers, "Shut up, nice kid, just wait and watch." "So, do we have a deal?" I say, no, I asked you for a small fee, but you declined, so I will not be working for you." "What? You just agreed to feed my dog and now you aren't feeding her?" Screams. "Help, this kid just scammed me. He took my money and is trying to take my dog." Now, lucky for me, everyone on the street knows me and immediately started to defend me. Entitled mother, now outnumbered, finally gave up, and the nice kid came up to me and apologized. I said this was not her fault and had nothing to apologize for. She ended up giving me her number. Let's go, boys. In this situation, if you got that number from them, is it even worth it knowing that if things got serious, you would have to deal with entitled mother a lot more? Let me know in the comments down below. Our next story is by GameLord562. Give my son all your fishing gear and the fish you caught. This story happened about 2 years ago. I have always enjoyed fishing and frequently fished at a river a short ride away from my house. There was also a park at the spot I fished, so there were usually some kids running around. I thought they tended to stay away from the spot I fished from. There were a lot of snakes there. I've been bitten quite a few times. It was a pretty slow day and I hadn't caught anything in the 2 hours I was there. This kid, about 8 or 9, comes over and asks what I'm doing. After I explain I'm fishing, nice kid takes a huge interest in it and starts talking up a storm with me about it. I'm always happy to talk about fishing, and the kid seemed pretty hyped and said he was gonna ask his parents to get him a rod. Up until this point, I was having a good time, but then entitled mother comes onto the scene. She walked over with a younger kid who was only about 4. Nice kid threw a somewhat worried glance at her but continued to talk to me. It was then that the other kid spoke up. He started asking his mom what me and his brother, I didn't know that but I did soon after, were doing. I explained that I was fishing and that his brother was interested in it. Nice kid told his mom how it was really fun and that he wanted to start fishing. Entitled kid then said he also wanted to fish and started begging entitled mother to take them to the store to get some fishing stuff. Entitled mother then looked at me and told me to give my rod and gear to her kids. I had read a few stories from here at that point, but it's one of those things you assume is never going to happen to you. So I was speechless for a second. Entitled Mother then goes on about how buying rods for them would be so expensive, and that since I probably have more, then I can give them my rod. Now, I do own several other rods, but she is right about good rods being expensive, and I'm not handing out my fishing gear to random people who demand it. I politely told Entitled Mother that I can't just give away my rod and that it's too big for Entitled Kid anyway. I tell her that she can buy some rods quite cheap at quite a few stores. She then proceeds to start yelling at me for calling her kid small and demands I hand over not only my rod, but also all my other lures and gear. I stood my ground and harshly refused because, at this point, I was getting annoyed with this woman. Then a fish took my line and I quickly turned my attention to that. It was a bass, and to those of you who don't fish, bass are a fun catch due to the hard fight they put up. This one was pretty big and was jumping out of the water attempting to spit my hook. After a few minutes, I brought it in and began trying to unhook it. I had forgotten about Entitled Mother and Entitled Kid at this point, but when I turned around, I found Entitled Kid going through my tackle box while Entitled Mother was holding my bait. She then told me to hand over the fish since I could just catch more, and that her sons needed to be able to tell their friends they caught that fish. I then told her two things. 1, it was a catch and release. 2, to kindly shove off, with much harsher words being used for the second one than I care to post here. I then grab my bait from her and order Entitled Kid to get away from my tackle box. She gets this enraged look on her face, but seeing my much more enraged look, she chose flight over fight. She took both Entitled Kid and Nice Kid and left. Didn't see her for the rest of the day and thought that was the end of it. But the next day I came back with a friend to do some more fishing. Entitled Mother, her 2 sons, and this time her husband were there with brand new fishing rods. The moment Entitled Mother spots me, she comes over and starts yelling at us, claiming that we were the reason her sons weren't catching anything. I hadn't told my friend about this, so he starts to explain how you don't always catch stuff, but I cut them both off by telling her to freak off. At this point, Nice Dad comes over, and I admit, I was a little worried this guy was gonna be like his wife, but he's a chill guy and takes our side. Entitled Mother tried to stay and continued to accuse us of completely random things I don't even remember. Entitled Kid comes back with Nice Kid a few minutes later, and they both apologize for Entitled Mother's behavior. After that, she didn't bother us, though Nice Dad and Entitled Kid fished with us for the rest of the day. I think Entitled Kid didn't like fishing after not catching anything on his first day. To any aspiring anglers, don't let this dissuade you, because we never saw him or Entitled Mother after that. Nice Dad and Nice Kid still kept coming and fishing together, so I guess it's a happy ending, with Entitled Mother getting spited by us and a father and son finding a great family activity in fishing. Fishing is definitely an activity that isn't for everyone because there can be a lot of idle time. I kind of liken it to like a soccer match. Millions and millions of people enjoy the entire thing and think it's a lot of fun, and then you have those few people who only want to play or watch just for the goals. And our final story of the day is by animating artist, entitled Mom Demands a Free Cake on Our Child's Birthday, Gets a Temp Ban from the Store. Okay, so this story happened a year ago, right around when the pandemic started. So on March 8th, 2020, my dad and I were waiting in line at a store, and I had a mini chocolate cake with me, along with some candles and sprinkles. I hadn't celebrated my birthday in 2 years, and this would make year 3, as my whole family canceled on me due to the pandemic. Which I get, but since I hadn't had a good birthday celebration in some time, my dad decided it would be a let's eat cake and watch movies tonight kind of birthday. I had put my cake on the conveyor belt along with my other items before putting my headphones in while I wait in the line with my dad. I was halfway to jamming out to my music when I feel a tap on my shoulder. I look behind me, only to see a woman looking at me before smiling. She wasn't wearing a mask at this time because they weren't required, but my dad and I still were, as it was better to be safe than sorry. I take out my headphones and just stare at her. She had shoulder-length dirty blonde hair, a pink shirt that barely reaches her belly button, and a pair of thigh-high shorts. Where I live, it's always sunny, so those outfits are pretty normal. She was maybe 34 or 35 from the looks of it. She had a child with her, maybe 10 years old. He also wasn't wearing a mask, but he was a pretty sweet kid. He was actually really quiet and not entitled like his mother. Hello, ma'am," I said, kinda nervous. I've suffered with anxiety for a while, so talking to people I don't know can make me nervous. Kay says, "Hey kid, can I ask where you got that?" she says, looking in the direction of the conveyor belt. "Got what?" I look in that direction. "That," she says, pointing at my cake. "Oh, you mean my cake? I got that in the back of the store where all the other baked goods and the bread are." Kay says nothing. I say, "I hope that helps, ma'am." Without even a thank you, the woman ran off, leaving her kid at their cart right behind me. He just looked at me and smiled. "I like your purple hair, miss." I remember just seeing my little brother and smiling to myself before responding, "I like your Cars t-shirt, it's pretty cool." After that, my dad and I just shared a glance about what the woman did and I just shrug. After around 3 minutes, my dad and I make it to the front of the line and my dad realizes he left his wallet in the car. Since we were parked close to the store, the cashier let my dad run out to the car to get his wallet. Right after he left, I hear a scream. I and everyone else turned their head to see the woman I had talked to earlier. "This brat stole my cake," she yells, pointing at me. "What? No, "Yes, you did, you brat." She didn't even let me finish my sentence. "You stole my cake, then you were very rude to me when I asked for it back." Manager walks around the conveyor belt and stands next to the cashier and looks at me. "Is this true, miss? Did you take her cake?" I say, "No, I didn't. Today's my birthday and my dad and I were just getting me a small cake." Kay, who is now back in line with her kid, "That's not true. I told you it was my kid's birthday and you just got mad at me and took my cake." Me close to tears at this point. "Ma'am, stop lying, please. I already told you that this was my cake." As the woman started to yell at me, the manager, and even the cashier about how I was lying, I heard someone walk behind me. I could see it was my dad. I remember hugging him tightly before he put his hand on my shoulders and was asking me what happened. I just pointed at the yelling woman, and he nodded before getting in front of me and looking at the woman. He says, "May I ask why you're screaming at my daughter?" "She stole my child's birthday cake. Now get out of my way and let me talk to the little runt." Yes, she swore in front of everyone, didn't even call me a B, called me a C. Dad says, "Ma'am, let me ask you this. If this is your cake, why do my daughter and I have the candles and sprinkles while you only have a magazine, a bag of chips, and a soda on your part of the conveyor belt?" While this logic didn't make the best sense, the woman went quiet. Manager looks at my dad and me and goes to talk when we all hear a little voice. "That's her cake," sweet kid says with a smile. All of us look at him, and honestly, I thought that he was saying it was his mother's cake. "Whose cake is it, kiddo?" the manager asks, looking down at the 10-year-old. "The girl with the purple hair." He pointed at me before going to the conveyor belt. He stood as tall as he could before pushing the cake towards me and my dad. Karen about to exclaim something before Dad chimes in. "Also, if you don't believe me, my daughter, or the kid, there are cameras all around this store." If the woman was quiet before, she was extra quiet now and her face was turning white. We paid for the cake, candles, and sprinkles. Then on the way out of the store, I could hear the woman yelling about how she wanted a free cake for all the BS she had to deal with today because of that entitled brat and her father. My dad and I just laughed and left the store. Before we left, I turned around and see the small kid waving at me as his mother kept yelling, louder and louder. I waved back at him as my dad and I left. Around a month later, my dad and I had come back, masked up and hand sanitized again, just coming for groceries. I met up with a worker who was a friend I knew in high school. We started talking and the lady came up. They looked at me and laughed. "Wait, that entitled brat was you?" I just nodded and looked at them, curious as to why they were laughing. Through laughs, my friend says how the woman knocked down the magazine and lollipop stands by the cash register, along with cussing out the manager and the cashier. She ended up getting a temporary ban from the store. I had also found out that my dad and I got the last mini cake that day. We both had a laugh, then I had to say goodbye and I caught up with my dad so we could leave the store soon. To be honest, I just remembered this story because it's almost March 8th again. Well, if you were tired of not having any memorable birthdays, that's certainly one way to get one in the memory bank. I just hope that kid grows up continuing to have that honest and sweet demeanor. But I'm pretty worried that that mother is going to put a stop to that at some point. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.